Thank you. Reimagining. To make a conscious choice, to imagine a new possibility, to design a new lifestyle or identity. It's a process that's made up of 5 unique components. There's the change, there's the catalyst, the difficulties, also the possibilities, but ultimately the transformation. But what happens when this reimagining is happening and you aren't aware of it? Change is inevitable. Everything changes. The seasons change. The economy changes. Your body changes. Change happens without warning. So how do you consciously choose where you want that change to take you? Again, if you have no idea that's going on, take a moment, and I invite you to take a deep breath in, exhale slowly, and close your eyes. Remember when you were 8 years old. It's a great time in your life. Right now, we're approaching Thanksgiving, so think about Thanksgiving when you were 8. See the colors, hear the sounds, be aware of the smells. Again, it's autumn. There's an excitement in the air. The holiday season's about to begin. You're in 3rd grade. You're hanging out with your friends. You're learning new things. You're growing every day. You're spending time with your family. 8 years old is a pretty good time for most kids. You can open your eyes. Do you remember the innocence of being a child? You know, that point in life where you had total faith in your parents. No matter what happens, you just knew everything will be okay. Now, I want you to imagine how you feel as the following unfolds. You're going to bed one night and your mom calls you over and says, I need to take a look at this. And there's a lump on your shin. You hear her very softly saying, what in the world? You didn't even notice it wasn't hurting. But the next morning, you're taken to the hospital and you're put on this cold, hard table and told to lie still. They're going to take x-rays. X-rays? You've got no reference point for what's going on, but you trust your mom. You trust the people that she's taking you to. So the doctor gets the x-rays, holds them up to a fluorescent light, and you can see everybody's facial expressions change. You can feel the energy shift, but you've got no idea what's going on. And he points to this discoloration in the bone, looks at your mom and says, it's cancer. You can feel the air go out of the room, but you don't know why. You're looking around at everybody, and you realize, looking at their facial expressions, that this is not a good thing that he's just told us. Cancer, 8 years old, they never heard the word before. Well, at that moment, life began to change. I began to change. But I had no idea of where that change would take me to. December 12th, I was admitted to the hospital. And they told me that they were going to do a biopsy on December 16th. And they did the best they could to explain to an 8-year-old child what was going to be happening. They told me that one of 2 things would come out of this biopsy. If the cancer was what they called malignant, they would end up amputating my leg, cutting off my leg. Because if it was malignant and they didn't amputate, then it would spread through my body and kill me. Kill me? I'm 8 years old. 8-year-olds don't die. How? Why? I can't wrap my head around this. They then tell me that the second possibility is that it'll be benign. So if I wake up and there's 2 scars, that'll mean everything's okay. There would be 1 scar where they actually did the biopsy, and then they would have taken some bone from my hip. That would be where the second scar was, because they're going to take and replace the cancerous bone. I'm not understanding any of this. I don't get it. Again, my mom knows these people. She trusts these people. It's going to work out somehow. 1973 cancer was nowhere near as popular as we hear it being right now. Popular, maybe not the right word, but you didn't hear about it as much. They weren't even tracking the percentages of people who had contracted bone cancer, let alone children. I knew that people would look at me differently. They would think about me differently. Hell, I couldn't hide the fact that there was something different about me. December 20th, 5 days before Christmas. I wake up from the neck surgery. I feel an itch below my knee. I'm still groggy from the anesthesia, and I'm like, it's a miracle, they saved my leg. I reached down to scratch the itch, and the leg was gone. No Christmas miracle. I know I'm taking you on a little bit of a roller coaster here, and we're going into some pretty dark places, but please stick around. I promise there is a happy part to this story. I've invited you to come on this journey with me for a very specific reason. I've asked you to think about it through the perspective, the perception of an 8-year-old child. And although I'm sure you did your best, the reality is you're processing all this information through the mind of an adult, possibly a parent. So what I invite you to do right now is to think about having the information that you have. How would this information have shaped your vision of yourself, of your life, of your identity? Would you have been angry or inspired? Would you have taken on the identity of the underdog or the victim? With every change, with every catalyst for reimagining, you stand at a moment of choice. You can focus on the difficulties or embrace the possibilities. But if you're not aware that there's a choice, then everything is just left to chance. I began to reimagine my role as a son, my religious beliefs, my spiritual beliefs, my self-worth, my abilities, and my limitations. 2 weeks after I was out of the hospital, I was driving snowmobiles. Doing pretty well. 6 months, I had my first prosthetic. I was 9 years old, riding bicycles, had my first job at 11. 15 years old, I was making my living as a professional musician. I lettered in junior high school wrestling and high school football as a place kicker, a one-legged place kicker. I was the first licensed amputee motorcyclist in Pennsylvania, and I had my first business by the time I was 19 years old. Pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. To the outside world, I looked like the shining example of how a child overcomes losing a leg to cancer. But inside, I was a basket case. My primary focus was, why me? And without realizing it, that question was causing me to reimagine my identity and everything that was going to happen in my life. So there's a principle that if you ask a question, you get an answer. You ask a bad question, you get a bad answer. The answer that I came up with for why me was, I'm defective. God hates me. I'm not worthy of love or happiness. I'm such a bad person that it's not safe for other people to be around me. This decision to believe in those things took me on a totally different path. 13 years old, I started drinking and using drugs heavily. 16 years old, I was riding with a biker gang. Senior in high school, I was spending weekends at the local fraternities because I looked old enough to be there. 19 years old, I got my first DUI. And in the next 12 months, I got 4 more arrests for driving under the influence. At my highest point, I was drinking a case of beer, a half a bottle of tequila, and taking 2,500 milligrams of caffeine. I didn't do anything halfway, just so you know this. 20 years old, I was facing 5 to 8 years in jail. And I ended up doing 12 months in Baltimore City Jail, spent my 23rd birthday there. When I was released, I was homeless, I had $40 to my name. I was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially destroyed. See, I'd been suffering in ignorance for 16 years before I finally became aware that I had become someone, something that I didn't even recognize. But at that moment, I took responsibility for my life. I realized that it was the decisions that I made, the actions that I took that got me there. It wasn't cancer's fault. It wasn't God's. It wasn't my family's fault. All those things I blamed for years, it was none of that. I was responsible. And at that moment, true transformation began to happen. Because I realized if it was the decisions that I made and the actions I took that got me there, well, then I could make new decisions and take new actions, and that would get me somewhere. But where? It didn't happen immediately. I actually had to take the time to decide, who am I going to be? What are my new standards going to be? How am I going to live each and every day? Didn't happen overnight. But by starting with the idea of who I needed to be, then I would do things differently. If my highest value was now that I was going to be a man of honesty, then I would never intentionally mislead or harm anyone. If another one of my highest values was to be a man of integrity, then I would always do the right thing, even when other people weren't watching. And if I was committed to being a man of service, I would always lead with the question, what would love do in this situation? So I immersed myself in the process. I didn't try to become that person. It was everything. Every day I was focusing on living those principles, because I knew that if I wasn't in alignment with that new identity, it was literally a matter of life and death for me. So I also realized I couldn't do it alone. I needed to find other people who would walk the path before me. If somebody was achieving something that I wanted to achieve but I wasn't, I had to find out why. I would pick their brains. I would sit down and have coffee with strangers and ask them questions. I would read books. I would go to workshops, to seminars. I had informal mentors, and I hired professional coaches. And through all of that, I learned more and more about who I really am and the potential of who I could be. It's been 33 years since I walked out of that jail. And here's just a few of the things that have happened by consciously reimagining. First and foremost, I have a 29-year-old daughter who has never seen me under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Thank you. And my daughter and son-in-law have blessed me with 2 amazing grandchildren, something I never, ever would have imagined was possible. As Carl mentioned, I started an entertainment company that I got to work with some of the most respected people in the business. Paul McCartney's publishing label. Don McLean, the guy that, American Pie, I worked with his manager. One of Led Zeppelin's producers and also one of their engineers. Sid Bernstein, he's the guy that brought the Beatles to America. I got to work with him as well. I had a 17-year friendship with the legendary Les Paul, the man who invented the solid body guitar. And due to that friendship, I had the honor of performing with him and his trio, Broadway, New York City, close to 100 times. What else happened? Let's see. Oh, around that same time, 1998, I was introduced to a man by the name of Tony Robbins. And he created the opportunity for me to dramatically reimagine my life, my direction, my identity another time. I'm actually on this stage today because of a friendship that started with the curator, your MC, Carl Gould, when we were both working for Tony back then. I've written 3 books. One of them's a #1 bestseller. 10 years ago, I was asked to put together a business proposal for a $2.5 billion real estate development program. Based on what I've learned in this journey, I've created a technology that combines neuroscience, practical psychology, and spirituality. I've been on TV, radio, went from being in a biker gang to the Wall Street Business Network. And recently I've reimagined my life again. For the past 3.5 years, I've been traveling around the country. I'm a nomad in a 40-foot motorhome. Still work, but I'm getting to see these beautiful sights, meet amazing people, and create unbelievable memories. And I got no plans on settling back down. Earlier, I asked you to imagine being an 8-year-old. Wherever you are in your life right now, everybody's on a journey. No matter whether you're in a place right now that's difficult or you're doing great, there's so much more potential that you have that you still haven't tapped into yet. So I'm going to invite you one more time to just close your eyes and imagine something. What would happen if you took 100% responsibility for your life? If you decided who you need to be, what changes would you make before you even leave this building today? What would you commit to? What standards would you hold yourself to? Who would you become? Change is inevitable. Growth, that's optional. Transformation is a freaking choice. Begin with reimagining. Embrace the possibility, the potential. I believe in every single one of you. Enjoy your transformation. Thank you.